kindness doesn't mean that you are a doormat. Kindness doesn't mean that you are a wimp. Kindness doesn't mean that you're a pushover. Kindness means that you are choosing. I am choosing to use my strength to hold this door open for you. I am choosing to use my strength to smile as opposed to frown. I am choosing, and not smile like I'm faking being happy, but I'm choosing to be welcoming as opposed to being um, insulated in myself. I am choosing, kindness is I'm choosing you over me in this moment. It's choice.
Hey, thanks for checking out Word Made Digital podcast on YouTube. My name is Joanna LaFleur. I'm the host of Word Made Digital, and this season, season 6, is all about the fruit of the Spirit. We're looking at what is the character behind the things that we do as creatives and communicators and leaders in ministry. So, thank you so much to Compassion Canada and to waybase.com for making this whole season possible. I want you to check out who they are in the links below. But for now, enjoy this video, enjoy this episode, and after you're done, check out tutorials, videos, podcasts, all the other stuff that we have as resources here on YouTube.
Chris Chase, and may I say Pastor Chris Chase, welcome to Word Made
Okay.
Digital.
Thank you for having me. It's the downside of this pandemic life. Well, upside is, we get to be creative and do these podcasts and these sort of things. The downside is that we're not sitting beside each other, hanging out at WeWork downtown Toronto, just chilling and shooting the breeze,
Like the old
and all that
days,
sort of
like the
stuff.
old
Like the
days.
old days, like in the old days where there were horse and buggies and the ability to go downtown Toronto safely.
Well, I live there, so I'll tell you, I hope it's safe to go downtown because that's where I spend. I'm not there today, but that's mainly where I live. So hopefully it's okay. Hopefully
Fair
it's
enough.
okay. But yeah, I mean, it's true. I miss being more with people, and I look forward to, when that opens up more and more here in Canada. That will be great. You've had like a lot happen to you over
Right.
like the last year. You want to tell us, just as a means of introduction, like what God has done in your life and what this new job is that you've taken on during this pandemic. How is it pastoring in a pandemic? let's
Oh
start
man.
let's start with that big one.
It's super easy. Just whatever. Everyone should leave their job or have their job leave them and then start pastoring during a pandemic. Like everyone should do it. Like everyone is doing it. Like that's what the cool kids are doing. No, a year ago, this time I was without work. I had been working at a company, a Christian company, for about 7 years, and COVID hit, and they didn't necessarily need somebody to do communications and traveling for them when nobody was able to travel anywhere. And so I got
Yeah.
the ceremonial thanks and was kind of meandering for about 2, 3 months, kind of figuring out what I was going to do. In the midst of that, probably 3 weeks after my last day, one of the worst things that had happened to humanity happened. We witnessed as a global world the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin, and from there, I found
Hmm.
myself along with 9 other friends of mine from a podcast show called The House of Common Show, doing a lot of Zoom calls with churches on the area of racial reconciliation, on the area of police brutality and police reform, on race reconciliation within churches, and that covered the bulk of my May and June, and then out of that, um, had an opportunity. Sometimes DMs through Instagram aren't that bad, and I got a direct message from an old friend of mine about an opportunity to sit down with somebody at organization called the Meeting House, and that conversation that DM led to a conversation that led to a number of conversations that has led me to being the lead pastor of our Newmarket Parish at the Meeting House, where I've been for it'll be a year in August, and started that job in the middle of a pandemic. And we're
Right.
currently still at time of recording this, May 17th, 2021, in the middle of a pandemic. I have yet to meet 2/3 of my church yet
Wow.
in person. Like
Yeah.
think about that. Like I've yet, because we rent buildings. we don't have our own space. So when people were able to kind of meet here and there for a couple of weeks and have to stop and go, we never had that. When last March happened and everyone stopped meeting together, we have not met together in a worship gathering since then. And so I'm pastoring a church that doesn't really know me yet, and it's really 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 interesting to be in that, and yet they seemingly like me, at least the 1/3 that I've met.
Oh man. Yeah, well, I mean, you don't really know because they haven't
And then yeah,
actually met you.
it can all be a lie. It can all be
Let's-
the biggest prank known to man. Like I'm being punked immediately, but I'm getting paid for being punked, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Now, in this, what's something that has worked? I mean, worked is maybe in quotations, but what's something that you found that is like helping to connect with people when you aren't able to meet in person? What are you trying to do to meet people, to pastor, to, there's probably some difficult conversations that happen for you as a pastor trying to help people in their crises of their own. What's anything for those who are listening? What's something that's worked for you or for maybe your whole, the larger community you're part of?
Making myself available however I can be. Now, my personality, we've gotten to get to know each other a bit over the last year and a half, 2 years or so. We've always known of each
Yeah.
other in different ways, shapes, or form, but in the last 2 years or so, we've been able to finally be like, oh my goodness, we're in the same space together. Oh my goodness, we like the same stuff, that sort of thing. And my personality is naturally,
Yeah.
whether introvert or extroverted, gregarious and very welcoming and very gathering, gathering in a way. And so whether that's via writing, via video, via social media, via invitation. Hey, let's get together on Zoom. Let's get together here. Let's get together there. Before the winter lockdown, when we were able to meet up, I was able to do a couple of smaller driveway meetups. Like it felt like old school church. Like I mean, like old school
Huh.
before we were born church, where like you're knocking on doors and you're sitting down, you're having tea with somebody or coffee with somebody at their home or in the vicinity of their home because we shouldn't have been going indoors, that sort of thing. But really making
Yeah.
myself available and then allowing the people who you connect with to help tell that story. Oh, you haven't met him, but I've met him, and here's what I know of him. He's a really nice guy. Blah, 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 this, that, the other thing. He was really kind. You should actually email him. He would actually be a good person to talk to you about this. And so, um, starting small and then letting those people help tell that story.
Right.
Um,
Like
right? Like that's
trust,
the only way
like
you can really
earning
do it.
trust with one person leads to them like sort of offering that, bridging that trust for others you haven't met yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's been the really because outside of that, it's not like you can't build bridges over a sermon. I've learned that like over the last few
Hmm.
years of ministry, like that's not what trust is built on. It's not built on leading worship. It's not built on a platform presence because you and I, we both know we've been in this in the game, as I call it, for a long time. We know that sometimes the person on the platform is not the same person in the line when they're waiting for the potluck. They're not the same person. What's real is when you're sitting face to face to somebody and you're doing the eye contact thing, or you're sitting like we are on camera and that sort of thing, and and that balance between comfortability and vulnerability and confidence and humility and all of those sort of things, and finding that proper blend with each person that you can sit with, admitting when you're wrong, admitting when you forgot to send an email, not tooting your own horn when something went really well, but not beating yourself up when something didn't go as well as you hoped, and kind of building on wins and allowing people to kind of see you as much as they can in the midst of all of this sort of stuff. But it's not going to
Yeah.
be me getting up and opening the scriptures and going like, "And the word of God said," like that's not going to do it.
Yeah, well, the focus of this episode of We're Made Digital, we're in a whole season talking about the fruit of the spirit because our team over at We're Made Digital, we're just like, man, what do people need right now? If we're going to have another season of the podcast, what is it that people actually need to hear, to be encouraged by, or what would be useful, like a useful use of their time and our time if we have some time together? We landed on this fruit of the spirit thing because It's just like feels like the world's been a hot mess lately of so much crazy on the internet and a pandemic that's been devastating economically, but especially, of course, physically to a lot of people around the world. We have, huge upsurge in conversation. The issue's never gone away, but more and more people talking about racial reconciliation issues or lack thereof. We're talking about, I mean, it just goes on. There's so much going on. As we record, there's this Israel-Palestine thing that has come up again. There's just lots going on and significant polarization. So the fruit we're talking about today is kindness. Being kind in this kind of environment, I think is harder than ever. And therefore, I think we need Jesus, like the power of God in more than ever. So I guess there's so many places we could go with this, but why don't we start with, when I'm thinking about kindness on the internet, talk to me about the podcast you do with your friends, and when you think of the word kind, maybe it's not a word you would associate with it directly, but I, as a viewer, as a listener, see that part of the fruit of what you're doing. So talk to us about your podcast and how you're trying to bring more kindness into the conversation through what you're modeling there as a group.
So it was around March or April of last year. We had 9 friends of mine and I, well, 10 friends. One of them is on the group chat, but he's not part of the podcast. We had this group chat going on, and the pandemic had just started. And the group chat had been dormant, and suddenly like we're talking all the time about a whole bunch of different things. And then one of our buddies was like, we could do a show with this sort of stuff, like this barbershop sort of
Mm,
anything goes, natural cross blend between we agree, we don't agree, and any sort of West Indian, Afro Canadian barbershop that you go into, there's conversations happening all the time. Well, not now because you can't go to them, but in the olden days, there'd be conversations about
yeah.
sports, politics, child rearing, house stuff, anything you can imagine. Like the barbershop would be this place to talk about it. And we're like, what would we look like if us as a grouping of men had this conversation about this inside baseball stuff of ministry, or this inside baseball stuff of being black men in Canada, and that kind of spun into this podcast, the House of Commons show that we've been doing for a year, 2 seasons now. And out of that, this we it was this weird sort of thing, Joe, where we have this podcast, and then maybe a month later, the world goes to crap. Literally,
Right.
like it's already people are already stressed out because we don't know whether we're wearing masks or not. We don't know what this pandemic is. COVID-19 is not that big of a deal, quote unquote. That's what we're thinking of, like in April. And then Christian Cooper, um, George Floyd, we're re-reminded of what happened to Breonna Taylor in March. We are re-reminded of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery in February. And then the protests that take place all throughout the summer. And people are asking us questions.
Like
And so,
around the
how
world protests.
yeah, like Coburg, Ontario had a Black Lives Matter rally. Coburg, Ontario. Have you been to Coburg, Ontario? It's not necessarily a space where you would imagine that there would be a Black Lives Matter rally, but it's happening there. Like all over, like say all over the world. I
Yeah.
think Coburg, Ontario. Like that's how big it is. And we try to create a space where we can have honest dialogue because not every black person agrees on everything. And while
Right.
we all might see this is the solution, we might see different roads to get there. But how we
Hmm.
disagree is kindness. How we agree is kindness. And then how we invite other people into the conversation to both listen and to add into it, regardless of color or gender or religious affiliation. That's kindness too. It doesn't mean that we always agree. It doesn't mean that I might not get my back up and say something with my chest to Andrew Jones, who's on the show, or to Calvin Forbes, who's on the show, or to Stephon Watson. But we know where we're coming from. It's all love at the end of the day. And we know that my opinion on this matter doesn't change my opinion of you, a person. Your opinion on something doesn't change my opinion of you, the person. So we're trying to, whether the conversation's about power dynamics and the imbalance of that when it comes to um, issues of men lording over their power over women to control positions, or whether it's the NBA season, or whether it's racial reconciliation, or whether it's Mother's Day. All these sort of things are all conversations that we want to have. They're all conversations that we have in private, and then from there, it's so how do we have this in a way that allows us to disagree, that allows us to get at each other, but at the end of the day, still treat one another with respect.
Right. Well, and that's it, that you're modeling as a whole group of men how to disagree.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, you can not all think the same thing. Because, of course, you put more than one person in a room, you put two or more people in a room, or two or more people are gathered, God is there, but also disagreement.
Yes.
And so you're showing, I think, in just how you treat each other, this level of kindness that is missing. I think in the it's so easy, right, to post on social or to throw up a video or to post a comment and say something and not listen to each other, but you're actually like exercising that.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but you just mentioned post something on social media and then say, this is my video and this is what I think. Dialogue requires the ability to hear someone's point and to go, literally just to pause for a couple seconds. That's actual
Huh.
dialogue. I used to do this thing like because we all did it. This is what I think about, and press send, and then that was it. An email to a family member, a video or a blog post on your Facebook wall, and then just cut somebody off if they disagree with you, and you realize like I'm not learning anything if I do that. So especially in this day and age where we're using social media more than we are actually using our words with one another, it's so valuable to incorporate all of those lessons that I'm learning in this show into every facet of how I use all sorts of mediums of communication. Even if I disagree with somebody, I have to go, am I disagreeing with it because they're right? Or am I disagreeing with it because I think they're wrong? Which is almost the same thing.
Yeah. um, so the word kind or kindness in Galatians 5 here, where we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And the reason I
Well
can
done.
remember them in that order is because of a song from my youth. um, but okay, so we got this word kind, but another way, or even sometimes, smart people who can translate scripture say often a more accurate translation of the word kindness can be the word useful. That
Mm.
actually we need to be useful. The Holy Spirit's the evidence of God in our life is that we are useful. Like we have you heard that, so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good?
Yeah.
Like you're not very useful. You're just so focused on something that's not here now that you can't do much for the people here now. So what do you think the usefulness is of your podcast? Maybe that's a funny way of asking it, but what use is this podcast? There's so many podcasts out there. Maybe in some ways it feels like this is becoming an infomercial for your podcast, which is not what it's trying to be. But I just think what you're doing is really unique,
Yeah.
and I want people to kind of get a glimpse of what's happening, because I think it could be modeled across so many other conversations.
Hmm. Like
What's useful
I
about
got a
what's the usefulness of this kind of content?
I got one of those notifications from Spotify on my phone the other day, and there was like there are over 3,800,000 blah 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 podcasts, and I'm like, and I am one of them. Thank God that I am one of three
Yeah.
million eight hundred plus podcasts, right? I think the usefulness of it is allowing we're ministry people. We've been, I'm saying you and I, Joanna, we're ministry people, and we know the conversations that we have at at conferences around lunch tables that are different than the conversations we'd have with other people, because you're in this
Hmm.
room with leaders. I'm not going to put levels in terms of what kind of leader, but there's conversations about things like salaries that you wouldn't necessarily have with other people. There's conversations you'd have about leadership structures that you'd have at that conference lunch table that you wouldn't have with other people. And what would it look like to actually have that conversation out loud, which is a scary thing. But if you're willing to
Yeah.
kind of, risk that and to say like, hey, listen, it's okay to have a conversation about X, Y, and Z. and here's how you have it in a way that is helpful. Because there's so much stuff about what we do that has been shrouded in mystery and shrouded in we don't talk about that. The problem with that is that because we don't talk about it, it then blows up in front of our faces over and over
Hmm.
and over and over and over again. So what would happen if we demystify this idea of ministry, the corporate part, so that we can actually get back to the ministry part of just loving people and serving people? So I think the usefulness is listening to a group of people actually have conversations that you have with your ministry friends, and you think, well, we might be the only people who are actually thinking about this. Like, no, you're not. And we're actually giving you a tool to actually then spread that around with other people. We might not be having the perfect conversation, but we're having a conversation about that topic to allow you to have a
Hmm.
springboard about conversation with somebody else. So I think the usefulness is there. And also I think for men of our caliber, there's a weird unfair thought that black men aren't this. So,
Hmm.
um, in sports, in football especially, not to be a sports guy, but if you describe a black quarterback, they're very athletic, they're strong, they're beasts. A white quarterback is very cerebral, very smart, can read the field. And the description there is that this white quarterback is very just in his head and has thought things through and is malleable to a coach. This black quarterback is so fast, so strong, he can't be like, and it's all about this physical
Huh.
part. And there's this unintentional, I'll use that in quotations, thought that black men are soulful, but they're not really smart. They are not capable that way. We're going to leave the leadership stuff to the theologians, who are namely white males, and to destroy that stereotype, to kind of say like, actually, no, I haven't met them, but I've sat down with 10 black guys, and they are as smart as X, Y, and Z. So it's useful for
Right.
people like us who have often felt, oh, we don't get invited to those tables because we don't seem like we're smart. We don't seem like we're intelligent. We don't seem like we're intellectual. We don't seem like this. And we're like, screw that. Let's make our own table and show that we are all those things. And we don't need your table to begin with. So there's usefulness that way too.
Oh, okay. We got to talk about that for a second. This idea of if you're not okay, you're not being invited to the table, you went and made your own table. Why don't you talk to us about that idea? What does that feel like, and what's possible? Because of course, we're made digital. We talk a lot about digital spaces and what's coming in, Christian context. Like, talk about like the table that some people
Sure.
aren't invited to, and like what's opening up in digital spaces. What are you seeing there?
So I think that there, for a long time, think of it this way, Joanna, like how many posters have you and I seen of leadership conferences where people like us weren't on the cover, where people like us
You
weren't
mean
main stage,
like the speaker, like the list of
like
speakers?
speakers
Yeah,
or
we're not
whatever else,
invited.
or
Yeah, you
hosts.
and I
We're
aren't
not
invited.
we're not on those,
Not very
things,
often.
right? No, just
Yeah, yeah, I know
or
what you're
like
saying.
like because there seems to be like quotas, right? Like, oh, we can get one woman there, let's right, and then we can get one person of color, and there and there, and then
Yeah.
it's filled so that you don't kind of fit there. Or there's conversations like I remember seeing this promotion for a women in ministry conference, and it was all white men as the main speakers, and you're like, how does that even happen? And so the idea of the table is, there's two places where things are changed. It's one, it's at the boardroom table, and it's at the worker level. And to kind of create our own table, it meant that we were able to create something where we were able to say we're going to do something for ourselves. For a long time, what was happening before was we were saying we were waiting to be invited to the party. We were waiting to be invited to the
Hmm.
party. Maybe they'll invite us there. And then finally we were like, you know what? Let's just do it ourselves. So the table was like, let's create something where we are voicing our concerns, in this digital space, in this digital way, and then kind of push that out there so people are realizing, oh no, there's actual conversations happening beyond the things that we think are actually really important.
Right.
So that
Now, do you
table
think?
represents the.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just like when I think of, like, we just talked about all the like the global response, George Floyd protests around the world. Do you think that that's part of this story, that like you don't need to wait? Like, I'm just, I'm curious about your perspective. There's probably five different things that made that go global, but is one of them just simply that, like, you don't need to wait for the conversation at that table? You can go build your own table. We're gonna like build a movement here.
Yeah, like I've never, I've I've been black my entire life. It's shocker. And I've never seen what I saw this past summer. And
Hmm.
it was a group of young people, right? It wasn't really even our age group, Joanna. It was
Yeah.
people younger
Yeah.
younger than us. It was people using TikTok. It was people using Instagram, having these conversations, forcing adults to kind of say, "How do I feel about that? I don't feel comfortable with. At least if you're gonna go downtown, wear your mask." Like these sort of things, right? And it was, the movement was led digitally. It wasn't. It was led digitally, and then it was on the feet, and nobody was waiting for somebody to give permission. And I think that's the cool
Right.
part about the conversation that we have on the House of Commons shows. We're not waiting for someone to give us permission to talk about something. Because, like I said, when we were sitting around, when you and I were sitting down at WeWork and we're hanging out, we're not waiting for someone to say, "Can we talk about this?" No, we're talking about it because it's coming up organically. We're not waiting for someone to say, "Okay, you know what, Joanna, we now dub the ability to talk about blah." We're just having that conversation, and we're the idea of waiting for someone to kind of dub the ready. We're long past that. We're almost
Right.
kind of we're all kind of we're building. We're almost like we're building the boat while we're on the water. All of us are.
Yeah, and I guess part of that, I'm curious now, fast forward, it's essentially a year later. Um, what do you think, that it was so quick and easy to build the table or to like get stuff out on digital platforms? It's accessible to everybody, so it was like quick to start, but also just as easy to die off. Or would you say, from your perspective, you're still seeing momentum? You're still seeing, like, what are you feeling, encouraged or discouraged compared to like the
Oof.
momentum you saw a year ago, or maybe both? Maybe
Oof.
both.
Oof. That's a oh. I don't. I'm a
Or do
pessimist
you have
by
like you got
nature.
a metaphor? Like, is it the microwave? Is it the crock pot? Is it the
Ah,
frying pan?
man.
Like hot in, hot out? What is it?
Oh, you've. I'll tell you what I saw.
Yeah.
I saw. I've never seen a summer like I did last year. And what I saw afterwards was there was a fatigue. There's a natural
Hmm.
fatigue. It's the idea of like I don't want to watch the news and see this anymore. I don't want to look outside and see this anymore. I don't want to open up my Facebook wall and see another. What about the other side? What about this? What about that?
Hmm.
We can get out and meet again. And even I don't like using the word woke because it's kind of lost on meaning over the last year and change. But even the most like woke of everyone kind of found themselves back into a sense of regular routine.
Yeah.
There was never sort of a raptured moment like there was May of last year where we were like, remember, we were all home then, and we were all
Right.
sort of like in this scared space of like we don't know what's coming next. That hasn't happened now. There's a lot more rebellion as we've seen in terms of being home and that sort of stuff. And so I
Well, and
think
other
that
parts of
there's
the world, I mean, are opened up a lot more than
right
in
than we
Toronto
are now,
area. Yeah.
right? And so there's our anger has been focused on other things. Our anger has been focused back to ourselves and our
Hmm.
freedoms and what we want. And so the I don't want to say the movement's at a standstill because as long as there are people alive and people who are posting things and people who are remain angry, it will continue to kind of move ahead. It doesn't have the momentum like it did,
Yeah.
simply because I think for a number of people, and I think for a number of people, this was the first time they realized this was happening, and they didn't realize when they first went out on their first protest that this is not going to be fixed tomorrow. But like,
Okay, yeah.
many people they died before seeing. It's like in scripture, they died before Moses dies before he sees the promised land from afar. He doesn't get to go
40
see it,
years of desert. Yeah.
right? And realizing what how long do we have to protest? Oh, forever. You know what I'm gonna be
Hmm.
more angry about? Maybe angry about masks, because that will probably be over the next 2 years. That seems solvable, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, in all of this, the kind of year we've had, what are some ways when we think about kindness, I think about our kindness towards other people. I think of God's kindness towards us. But then there's this piece about our kindness for ourselves, our kindness towards
Hmm.
ourselves. I think some of that can be painted under like I think of like Parks and Rec with the treat yourself day. I don't know if you know that show where like,
I do.
this
Treat
mentality
yourself.
of, go, yeah, treat yourself. Like, you want that handbag, treat yourself.
Self.
You want a pedicure, you want a massage, you want that whatever, treat yourself. But I think that's like obviously like probably not a biblical, holistic view of what it means to be kind. Maybe there's some piece of it that's fine, but how do you do that? Like this year has been really rough. So not that we're all succeeding at this, but what are some ways you're trying to be kind to yourself? In this long, as you've said, this is a long, lifelong struggle that you're in the midst of, that, that we are a community, a culture, a church trying to reckon with. How do you be kind to yourself in all that? It's exhausting out there. There's some people who are gonna say crazy stuff all the time.
I think that for me, being kind means not taking myself too seriously.
Hmm.
And it's a weird thing, but like when you take yourself too seriously, then you're not willing to take a break. You're not willing to pause. You're not willing to um, see. Sometimes someone's comment is less about you and more about them working out what they're going through and what they're thinking about.
Hmm.
So kindness has just been, yeah, don't take what you do seriously. Take what you do it with seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Kindness is, you go back to the definition of being useful. My old senior pastor would say, if you make yourself available to everyone, then you really aren't giving yourself over to anyone because you don't have enough to actually give. So taking breaks in order to actually be useful, and also sticking my nose in places where it actually belongs. Right? We live in a day and age now where you can post on anything on your Facebook wall, and like I can just like I disagree because it has nothing to do with anything, and I really don't know what I'm arguing about. I'm in an argumentative mood, and that's not useful. But some people, they feel like everything, like, oh my goodness, Joanna's wearing blue. I'm gonna tell her how I feel about blue. Like, how is that helpful to anything? So actually, really
Or like you're
commenting
wearing
on
blue,
things,
that must mean you hate green.
right? Like, right, and you're
Yeah.
like, I actually like green. I just chose to not wear it today. Well, according to your social media, I never seen green. And so
Yeah.
to find myself placing myself in positions that are actually useful, and using my voice as minuscule as I think it is, for things that are helpful, to build up and not tear down, to strengthen and not weaken, to encourage and not
Hmm.
discourage, to correct in order to see somebody go better or go further, as opposed to correct because I'm jealous that they're doing better and going further.
Hmm.
So that's I choo- and
And
then on top of that, the natural, if I can treat yourself 2011, if I can actually like do something where I can actually like gift myself something where financially it makes sense, it's not going to put my family in debt, then I'll do that as well too.
okay, so like what might something like that, like something you haven't bought? This is just a fun question. Like if you were going to be kind to yourself and there was something in
Ooh,
2021 that you were going to get, how would you treat yourself?
ooh, I well, the easiest thing would be a pair of Jordan 1s or a pair of Jordan 11s. That'd be the
Okay.
easiest bet.
I knew it. I
Um,
knew he was going to say shoes. I just didn't know
yeah,
which
it would
shoes.
be yeah. If I was gonna treat myself, like if I was like yeah, like it'd be either that or something practical like a finished basement with a surround sound system, like that sort of thing. Like those would be the two things,
Oh,
like
yeah.
shoes
Treat yourself.
or like yeah, but those would be yeah, like if yeah, like it's gonna be shoes. Ultimately, it's gonna be shoes, shoe related.
You know what? For me, I just can't wait to get on a plane again. That's probably the
Mm,
biggest treat myself that I want in 2021 is just to get on a plane and go somewhere. Um, I look forward to that.
okay,
Okay.
I'm
So,
taking it back. I'm gonna go traveling. I'm gonna travel myself too. Like yeah, I'm taking it
all
back.
right, all right. You can treat
But
yourself
with
in
it,
many ways.
there you go. Exactly. Agreed.
Okay, now we've got like kindness to yourself checked off. I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast over, I don't know, various different guests. Just the the soundtrack in your head, the way we can just like destroy ourselves before we've even gotten out the gate. That we have to be so conscious of how we're being kind to ourselves, because I think so often we're the worst to ourselves. Like we say stuff
Yeah.
to ourselves we would never allow ourselves to say to another person, or we wouldn't think if someone else said they were going to try some new adventure, some new activity or business thing or whatever, we probably wouldn't be like, yeah, good luck, you're going to be terrible at that. But we do that to ourselves all the time. We're so unkind to ourselves. And, ultimately it's, of course, it, as if the word kindness could also mean useful, it's just not useful. It doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't produce anything. It doesn't create good fruit for us. It doesn't go anywhere. Um, what is, when you think of the kindness of God in your life as represented by people, people you've known in your life. Um, what strikes you as something? Maybe it's just something in like the last year, but just in your life. Do you have anything that comes to mind of like the kindness of God towards you? When you think of God being kind, what does that look like for you? Or who do you
Um,
think of?
for first and foremost, I feel like I'm accepting an award. I accept this kindness award on behalf of, but you know, I've caught a number of families who this has been really hard for them. You know, this COVID lockdown stuff has been really hard for them, and I've been fortunate. We haven't had all amazing days, but the kindness of my wife and my kids and my towards me and me towards them has been super helpful because it's already stressful enough being in the same space, especially 6 months of winter where like going for a walk is painful in January,
Yeah.
and yet we've been able to survive and thrive on some days, which has been really great. And then the next thing I'd think of is, when I lost my job in May of last year, I I, I was hesitant to post anything about it. We do that. I stubbed my toe. Honest post, guys. Yesterday I stubbed my toe. Just pray for me, like that sort of thing. And we kind of like everything gets shared, and I was really hesitant to really say anything. And if I look back on it, I really don't think I did. I have to kind of go through, but the amount of people who not right after, but as the summer months went along, who just checked in, hey, how you doing? Have you found anything? Praying for you, that sort of stuff. Some people giving unsolicited advice, but they're trying to be useful. You know what I mean? Like, what you should do with
Yeah.
your life, blah blah blah. Right?
They're
That's what.
trying at
Thank you,
least.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
They're trying, right? The guys on the House of Commons show, we've gone through wars together, not in terms of fighting, but like we've walked each other through different things over the course of this year. Loss of jobs, loss of family, loss of opportunities, those sort of things, and we've kept each other afloat with our words and with our actions, because getting together has been difficult for us. And lastly, this new church that I've been able to be a part of, it's really hard to get to
Hmm.
know people that, in this moment in time. There's already inside jokes that I'm not a part of. To quote Michael Scott, I love inside jokes. I love to be a part of one someday. But this the kindness that they've shown to me, um, in trying to get to know me and trying to learn me as I learn them. has been has been endearing, has been really, really,
Hmm.
really endearing to kind of watch them try and watch them learn alongside. You're learning somebody who's in 2D, on a screen, and
Yeah.
yet there's a willingness to kind of stand up for the little guy, stand up for the new guy, which has been really cool.
Yeah, I love that. Um, the scripture, I think, again, in the context of the so Rich Villodas, he's been on the podcast and he posted recently on Instagram, but it's not a unique concept to him. But he posted something like, it's a curious evangelism strategy where you want to judge, post hateful things, or critique the very people that you are trying to, invite into a relationship with Jesus. Like, you're being horrible to these people who you're
Hmm.
trying to invite to know God. And so there's that scripture that says it is the kindness of God that leads us to repentance. Um, have you seen that play out in your life? How have you seen that, or have you seen that play out maybe as a pastor, um, in the life of your community? How has the kindness of God led you to change, or led you to want to change at the very least?
Well, like, an easy illustration of that verse is, you get more flies with honey,
Hmm.
right? Like you attract more, but kindness is attractive. Kindness can be annoying if it's used the wrong way, but used the right way, it's attractive because it's different in the sense that
Right.
we are so built on doing things for ourselves. We're so built on just walking by somebody, headphones in, looking at our phones, listening to music, and going. And so to actually look at somebody and to smile at them, especially nowadays because we're covered up, it's so much, it means so much more. And what I've found is, let's tell a quick story. I was at Walmart because that's what we do now. When you go in the parking lot and you wait for your bags to get brought out, and because why would you go in the stores? You're scary. And I'm sitting in the parking lot, and this lady's in her car beside me, and she has her granddaughter in the back of her car. And it was one of those days where like I didn't want to talk to anybody. I know,
Hmm.
Chris, you're a pastor, you're a leader. There's some days where I'm introverted, and I just want to sit here and listen to Floor 93.5 and hear five Drake songs in a row because that's all they ever play. But she asks me a question, and I respond back, and we get into this conversation, and then suddenly we're standing 6 feet apart. We're in front of our cars, and we're just kind of just kibitzing and just talking about what we both do. And her granddaughter's in the back of the car, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't seen a 3-year-old in like a year and a half. Oh my goodness, child. Hello, I
Yeah, if you
adult, I
don't
grown
have
up.
one, you haven't interacted.
You're like, I don't know how to be right now. And just this ability to actually just do life with somebody. And originally I was like, I don't want to talk to nobody. I just want to go, bet, get my groceries, go home, Netflix on my couch. That's it. Bet, we're good. But the idea of this kindness that was shown to me, I could not help but have this conversation with this person and their family as we were both waiting for groceries, and just how much better it was leaving and then texting back and going, "Hey, I'm going to be late. Why? I'm talking to somebody. You're talking to somebody? That's amazing. Like, huzzah, we're having conversation." And, from a church perspective, it's the same thing. As I make myself available and say, "Hey, listen, I have this link on the bottom of my email. If ever you want to talk about anything, click the link, book a
Mm,
time, let's do it." And meeting these strangers who then you find something in common with, who then you find more things in common with, who then become allies alongside you as you're trying to
mm,
build this church, now essentially a church plant from the ground up, waiting for their launch date. This as I'm inviting people towards kindness and being kind towards them, they're then being kind towards each other. And it's not just some talking head saying you need to go into your community. No, it's like I can do this because I've actually seen him do the same thing for me.
yeah. I love that. You can get, what is it? You can catch more fly. You can catch
Flies
more
with
flies
honey.
with honey. That there's a
Yep.
Yeah, there's an attractiveness to those of us who are kind. It stands out. And I see that in what you're doing. It's why I leaned in, in the first half of the conversation just on your podcast, because I see it's what you guys are doing. People, hopefully, I don't know, have experienced kindness from their pastor, from their leader. There's a lot of also Christian leaders out there who aren't kind, who are trying to just like guilt you, yell at you into the kingdom of God. But it's an encouraging reminder that that kindness wins, actually, and it's stronger than we would think it is. It sounds like a wimpy or a weak thing, but it's actually like a real powerful tool to
It's a
be
choice.
kind.
It's a
Yeah.
choice. Like it doesn't mean that, kindness doesn't mean that you are a doormat. Kindness doesn't mean that you are a wimp. Kindness doesn't mean that you're a pushover. Kindness means that you are choosing. I am choosing to use my strength to hold this door open for you. I am choosing to
Mm.
use my strength to smile as opposed to frown. I am choosing and not smile like I'm faking being happy, but I'm choosing to be welcoming as opposed to being um insulated in myself. I am choosing kindness is I'm choosing you over me in this moment. It's choice. It's not
Mm.
weakness. It's actual it's a mixture of involuntary but also calculated. Like you're choosing this moment to to be nice to somebody. So if I see you and I've had a long day and I just happen to get off the subway and I'm like I see Joanna LaFleur walking across from me. Like that's a buddy of mine. I could be like, man, I'm tired, so I want to get home. And I know if I chat with her because we're gonna kibitz, it's gonna be a while. No, you know what? Because that's you're right. But the choice of kindness is, you know what? Let me say hi to my homie. Let me say hi to my girl. Let me just
Yeah.
check and see how she's
Yeah,
doing.
sure.
And if it's an hour conversation, bet it's all good because who knows, she might have needed that more. And who knows, on the other side, you're like, oh, it's Chase. Oh, he talks a lot. Okay, do I have an
Do I have
hour?
2 hours?
Do I have 2 hours? Do I have an afternoon to give up because I gotta have a whole bunch of things? You know what? I might not have an hour, but I have a half an hour. Let's do this sort of thing. And that kindness is something that
Yeah.
like you leave just feeling a lot better about yourself and about the world.
Yeah. I think kindness, when I think of all the fruit of the Spirit that we're talking about in this whole series, I feel like the more we talk about it and kind of break it down, it feels like kindness is one of the ones that's easier, if it's like easier as a piece, if it's a fruit, like to pass to somebody else, where some of these are sort of internal or they're evidence in our life and between us and
Hmm.
God. But this feels like one that's so clearly like fruit of our life that we get to share with somebody else. Hey, Chris, if people want to find you, they want to find your podcast, where do you want to send people on the
Um,
internet?
I, I was gonna say if I want to send them to heaven, hallelujah. So if you want to find me, all my social media is under the same slogan, that Chris Chase. With regards to the show, you can find us on Instagram, easier. Type in the words "The House of Commons Show" and you can follow us there. You can interact with us because all 10 of us we have control over the account. So you can DMing one of us, DMing all of us. So follow either or follow the show and then through there follow me. But that Chris Chase and the House of Commons Show, those would be the two main ones.
Chris Chase, thanks so much.
I Joanna, I can't wait to see. I'm so happy that I've seen you, but I can't wait to see you, my friend.
Agreed.